It's hot. It's hot. It's hot enough. All right, this is one of those mornings where I anticipate the questions. Yes.
So what you're saying is essentially Passover, the Passover, Sabbath are kind of interchangeable terms when they fall.
I'm saying, yeah, I think I get the gist of your question. I'm saying there's more than one Sabbath, one rest day. We're used to thinking of every 7 days being a Sabbath. That's what, there were more Sabbaths.
And they did refer to them as Sabbath.
Yes.
They weren't just.
Yeah, that's right,
days.
that's
Okay.
right, yep.
Okay.
Yep, that's the one thing I wanted to introduce, and maybe didn't spend enough time on it, that we just don't think about it all. We're just used to the idea of a Sabbath, seventh day, and no other Sabbaths at all. And that's the new idea here for most, yes.
And we would have called it a holiday or a
Right.
holy day, and they
Yeah.
called it a Sabbath.
Yep,
The same idea there.
yep, yeah, and on that day, and what do we do on our holiday? What's the one thing, how do we know it's a holiday? How is it, guys? We don't go to work that day. Yeah,
So in this model, Jesus celebrates the Passover on Wednesday evening or afternoon.
that's
The
right,
Passover's on Friday.
that's right.
Is that normal?
I don't know, I looked at that a little bit. There is some question about another celebration, because it looks like when he hands Judas the Passover meal, it's not meat. So it looks like there's some other type of celebration. That I looked into briefly, but I can't conclude on that point. It's very intriguing that he shares what apparently is the Passover meal, but it's not. It's bread, and it looks like gravy, if you will, some sort of gravy. And that was that apparently was a very special thing, but we don't see that as we don't see the Paschal Lamb involved in that celebration. We have another question somewhere. Oh, yes.
Are you the lone wolf on this one, or are there other people?
No, Pastor Phil Kaiser.
Phil Kaiser holds this.
Yes. So we're the lone wolves.
There's two
We're
lone
not, yeah, we're not the only ones. Yes.
Sir Robert Anderson actually wrote a lot about this in the late 1800s, and he was a detective for Scotland Yard, and he very much held to that position. That's what he taught over in Scotland and England.
Okay. So three of us riding up here.
And one from Scotland Yard.
Yes. Scotland Yard guy outweighs me. We're going to hear more from Sir Robert Anderson, by the way, as we discuss Daniel's 70 weeks, as we study the book of Revelation. Sir Robert Anderson is going to come back. He spent a lifetime studying dates in the Bible. It's what he did. And what he does, and this is why this is critical, is he believes that, and I believe he's correct. We have very specific dates from Daniel as to when the beginning of the 70 weeks was, and Sir Robert Anderson believes and demonstrates that they would have known the exact date of Christ's triumphal entry into Jerusalem to the day. We'll hear from him a little bit more, a little bit later. But I want to get to you in a second, Jen. I want to circle back to you. Keep your thought. I wanted to mention something earlier and I didn't, and that was that idea of Jonah being swallowed by the fish, and what I think is the greater miracle here, and that is that Jonah preached to the people. I mean, you tell me which is the greater miracle. If you know anything about ancient Assyria, Jonah preaches then to the Assyrians. They repent in sackcloth and ashes. And Seth Brown has done some work on this and determined from secular history that the Assyrians stopped being a warlike people for about 100 years. They stopped. They were extremely warlike. No one could stand up against them. but they knocked it off for about 100 years, and then they got back into it. Can you guess when those 100 years occurred? Just go out on a limb for me. Yeah, they correspond, right, Seth? To the time that Jonah preached to him. Now, we talk about miracles. I don't know which is a greater miracle. That a warlike people, and that's all they were good for, suddenly becomes peaceful for 100 years? Miracle? Yes.
So, because it's a very specific date, shouldn't we be able to go back in the Jewish history, the current Jewish history, and find the exact, and make sure that this is exactly, that you are correct? Shouldn't there be a way to test that theory?
There should be. There should be. Kaiser does this. He said, the problem for it is that you have to do some science, if you will, and the science going backward. I mean, science is science, but you have to interpret it. What was it? And there are those that say you go back and the whole star thing, because with the stars you can apparently go backwards. At least that's what I'm saying. So you should be able to figure this out by the stars. I just don't understand all that stuff quite enough. I don't know how you do it. I've seen astronomers say it can be done, and it is done, and they can go back to certain dates. I don't even know how guys figure out when the next eclipse is coming, but apparently they do, and they go backwards and figure that stuff out as well. I just don't know how myself to do that, and I get lost at a certain point when these astronomer people start talking. Some of you folks in here can understand it probably. I'm just not one of them. Yeah, Dave.
If they figured out the exact date that Christ triumphantly came into Jerusalem, then you should be able to figure out very easily if that was a Passover Sabbath.
Right.
Or a special Sabbath.
Right, but going backwards, see, it's not as easy going backwards. In other words, for Sir Robert Anderson, you can figure it out from the time going forward, but how do you now figure out going backwards? You see what I'm saying? You knew the difference.
Dates and days are different too. Just because you can nail down a date doesn't mean you know which day of the week it is.
Necessarily, yeah. One thing for you to study if you want to have some fun sometime, Google Pope Gregory and the calendar. That's kind of a fun time. Pope Gregory, there were occasionally popes that were good for something apparently, and what he did was he understood that that times were getting messed up a little bit, and this, in other words, the years were getting off. Each new year started at a different time. Now, how do you do that? Each year started at a different time. Well, apparently, and I'll see if I can explain this. If you're a farmer, farmers go by dates on calendars at some points. They're not going to, plant something before a certain date. If that gets thrown off year after year after year, after a while you can really be thrown off in your farming. It adds up. As what Pope Gregory did was he set it up so that we knew that everybody understood that the years were 365 and 1/4 days and so many minutes and so many seconds. And what happened was when he did that, he took some time off the calendar. Okay, and when he did that, there were riots in the streets. People wanted their time back. They thought, oh, Gregory stole their time. Google that sometime. It's really, really intriguing. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge going back when we don't know when it started from. Yes.
For instance, I don't know if this pertains to that. Easter. It's always the first Sunday after the first full moon, after the first day of spring, and the first day of spring is going to be the longest day.
Yeah, so.
There you go.
Yeah.
The shortest day, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Halfway,
Yeah.
But that has nothing to do with it. It's going to be arbitrary every year.
Yeah, that's right.
It
Yeah.
sounds stupid, but
Yeah.
But it doesn't, it's not juggling any of the
Right.
calendars that have ever been, that's
that's the same, that is gonna be something that you can do. It's a solid thing you go back to every single year. You have to go back to, And that's what Pope Gregory actually had to adjust, because you have to know when's the longest day, the shortest day, and how much time is going to be in between. And then when we're going to this Easter thing, how is it that we can, is this a day of the week? Can we go to a certain day of the week, but it may not be a certain date.
Right.
It's a day of the week, because we have to do it, because the first day of the week and so forth. Are we good with this? There are no discrepancies, my friends. When it comes to understanding God, it starts with belief. That's where it starts. It starts with belief because he's worthy to be believed. He's worth it. He's God. We're not. All right, well, thank you very much for paying close attention to a sermon that I'm not used to preaching, more technical sermon, but thank you for paying such close attention. Wes.